the question is looking at different ways that attorneys get involved in startups. Some even take equity, take board seats. You had mentioned kind of deferring compensation for a while. Maybe just state, to begin with, what's the norm? What happens most of the time? And what are pros and cons of other models?
Yeah, good question. The norm is not to take equity, not to take a board seat. And I think if you're a Silicon Valley-based firm, the norm is probably to do some sort of fee deferral or work with them. What we found is at one of my earlier firms at Brobeck, we used to take equity a lot, and it kind of creates some conflicts of interest in a way, because you end up, rather than necessarily, even though in theory it makes sense because you're incented just like the entrepreneurs to sell the company and make money off your equity, at the same time, you want to do what's best for the company, and if it's advising them to walk away from a deal or that a deal's too risky, and we just found it got messy. And you know, I've done startups for a long time, so I've sort of seen the pros and cons, and for me, it got messy. So big firms don't tend to do that, and also big firms are, you know, have a lot of litigators involved, and they just think that's too risky anyway. So you don't tend to see that. You just tend to see that, I think, with smaller kind of boutique startup firms. Who kind of, you know, that's part of what they're getting, and they sometimes get involved maybe before I do. Like I was talking to some people right before class. I usually try to have 4 or 5 pre-financed startup companies I'm working with. So I'll work with the company even before the venture capitalists invest in them. Many more than that, it's too much risk as far as getting your bills paid, and just too much time kind of nursing the startup companies. And lots of times these companies come to me because I can make introductions to the venture capitalists. And so especially down in San Diego, they'll come, I'm based in San Diego, they'll come to me in San Diego and say, hey, I know you know all the guys on Sand Hill Road, you know, if you work with me, make some introductions. So I kind of do my own little filter of who's worth working with. So for big firms, you kind of can't do too much of that because you end up kind of spending too much time not able to build and too much time investing in it. And what you find is while that may be a good step and may make sense in some situations, the firms that do that don't tend to be the same firm that maybe can take care of you if you have to do the big transaction, like if you have to sell the company or go public or even a complicated venture financing.